Three, two, one. Hey, everybody. This is David Bloom, your co-host and co-founder of this here podcast, Next TMT Talks, with my co-founder, Daniel Frankel, talking about all things technology, media, and telecom. This week, Next TMT dips into the big bills facing all the broadcasters that want to keep their NFL rights, which is presumably everybody, and then some. We look at whether there'll ever be another movie year like the one Warner Brothers capped off with Oscar glory this weekend. And by the way, those two things are intertwined, I suspect. Still more Brendan Carr threats to uncooperative media organizations, the X Games League's first draft, and the WNBA's version of March Madness around still stymied contract talks. We'll both be at NAB next month, which should be fascinating, but not nearly as intriguing as what's happening the same week in the same town with the Adobe Summit as it loses its longtime CEO. Meanwhile, Bob Iger finally steps down this week as CEO of Disney, the second time. Finally, CBS debuts The Madison, Taylor Sheridan's latest, though perhaps least groundbreaking new show. Anyway, so Dan, what's on your mind? It looked like you were having a little, I don't know if Trump derangement syndrome is quite the term, but let's just say Trump disparagement syndrome.
I'm just trying to get my head around this. I'm sorry for being a little bit distracted, but the Madison? I wasn't aware of this. There's a new Taylor Sheridan show?
The new Taylor Sheridan show on top of the other new Taylor Sheridan show, the Marshalls, which is basically, just want to say, Marshalls is basically CIS Yellowstone. You know, like they're taking, or NCIS Yellowstone, whatever the initials are, but FBI Yellowstone, whatever. But
he's like a former Afghanistan Ranger killing machine whose violence finds him everywhere, but a lawman at heart. Yeah, I watched it.
But a lawman at heart who's secretly in love with the buffalo and the elk, and maybe even the gray wolf. The Madison is another all-star cast. Sheridan gets these fantastic casts. I mean, you got to say, he just lines them up. This one's got Michelle Pfeiffer and a bunch of other folks that are pretty impressive. And it's actually definitely worth tapping that. But New York family has unspeakable tragedy in New York. Somehow a terrible thing happens on the streets of New York, and they are left reeling, and they all find a way to end up going to Montana, where they are healed by the lack of a city or liberals or anything else. So that's the setup. Interestingly, they debuted this show in 2 tranches of 3 shows each.
I've got to check it out.
Yeah, which is interesting. Because that's a different thing than, we'll do 2 shows and then show you 10 more, one a week, or we'll give you all of them. But it's a new one. It gets a little bit, starts to feel a little, and this is unavoidable when you're as productive as Sheridan is, but it starts to feel a little iterative. And it's like, yes, you are making movies and TV shows, particularly TV shows, for the folks who live between the coasts. I will not call it Flyover Land because it is the place from whence I came and where I have spent a significant chunk of my life. And I have many people I love who are still there. But the folks who get left behind by some of the programming that comes out of Hollywood and New York. And that's all fair in love and war. But it does get a little bit,
I know exactly.
Got its own sort of repetitive notes here. So it'll be worse.
I have to show you this. Well, this is how the real Americans live. But I've been critical of Sheridan in the past. Maybe you've noticed that. But I gotta say, everything
only with Landman, I think. And Landman, you're like, I can't stop watching, but I hate myself. You know,
I love season 1 of Mad Men. It was Landman. It was great. I kind of got disconnected in season 2. Others loved it. It's a hit, no matter what I say. The guy,
and I do look forward to the mashup of Mad Men and Landman called Madland Men. That's going to be just fantastic about advertising executives in the oil business, trying to make you want to buy more oil. So that's going to be really hot. That, I'm sure, is the next Taylor Sheridan show. And I get a piece of the action, Taylor. Just saying it right now. We heard it here first. I'm putting my stake in the ground. I'm laying out my claim. I'm going to hit gold. I'm going to strike black gold.
So where were we? We were talking about
Brendan Carr, another one of your favorites.
Well, the dude is just everywhere. I think our Secretary of War and our president have been very adamant that the news media in America message about the Iranian excursion in the right way, their way. And they weren't even talking about ABC or NBC, which are the 2 networks not brought to heel already by the administration. Trump put out a Truth Social message about Wall Street Journal and New York Times being wrong about some war reporting. I forgot what the details were. And then Brendan Carr
It's all
chimes
right.
up
He
as well.
forgot too. So don't feel bad. I mean, he definitely forgot too. I mean, detail's not his main thing. So don't feel
Exactly.
bad
He's
about
got
that.
college sports to reconfigure and the
Or
White House
not to
Roy and
executive
rebuild.
order into the uselessness. But anyway.
Well, Carr chimes up saying, hey, listen, this pattern of news distortion that these broadcasters are involved with, I might just take your license next time I come up for. And it's just as the New York Times pointed out, I think it was on Saturday. You can't just do that. Congress must be involved with that. It's a process. Two, it's just downright authoritarian to send that message right now. And it's not. It can't be popular. He keeps doing it. It's just wrong. And he's involved in so many ways with across our spectrum. You have a cable company, Alaska, GCI, which they're trying to transfer control over to John Malone. And you've got groups, conservative groups, trying to hold that up by reminding Brendan Carr, hey, they haven't got rid of their DEI policies. Make them do that first. You've got operators in the cable sphere, like Newsmax's Chris Ruddy, who's also tattletaling. Hey, look what Jimmy Kimmel did. ABC should have their license revoked. Everybody's coming to him now, using him sort of as a cudgel against the left, and it's just, it's exhausting. On top of everything else that's going on, so
It is worth noting. Trump's hating on war coverage is not the first president to do this. I think back to the Sedition Act and World War One, where Woodrow Wilson pushed through very strict controls on a lot of conversation or protest about that war, which the U.S. really didn't need to join in on, but did. We go back well before that, but the Sedition Act, I think some of that stuff's still on the books and used as an excuse sometimes. So most of it's been tossed out. Going back to the Civil War, when this country was torn apart over slavery. Hate to tell you this, people in the South, but it was slavery. It was enslaving human beings. That's the reality.
well,
Um,
like
but
the
he also put in place controls over the newspapers at the time.
like the pearl crunching about the fate of the movie business, which we'll get in a minute. If there was any doubt ever that David Ellison had the Warner Brothers in the bag all along, it was dispelled this weekend when Hegseth criticizing CNN for how they were reporting on the war again. And the sooner Ellison could take over Warner Brothers and bring CNN to heel, the better. If that isn't revealing, what is?
I don't know, a payment of millions of dollars in crypto money. I don't know, but it's what it is. That deal's going through. They wanted it, they needed it more. We don't need to relitigate that conversation. I do think it's worth, though, talking about some things that are tied to this weekend. It's Oscar weekend. Warner Brothers, the subject of all that bagginess, had the two co-favorites, Sinners and One Battle After Another, part of an extraordinary 9 movies that opened number one this year from Warner Brothers, and 7 of which I think opened to more than $40 million. So a pretty good run of not just good on the weekend, but making some money
And their
and
linear
doing
division still shrank. I think you pointed that
and
out.
their money still, yeah, right. So their revenues from the movie side still shrank, and so he has said, and take all these things with a not just a grain, but a giant block of salt. Just lick that giant block of salt, because the reality is what executives say when they're trying to jam through a huge mega deal that makes no sense to any normal human being is a bunch of fooey, bluey, gooey stuff that doesn't necessarily stick around any longer than the gorgeous super bloom that is carpeting the floor of Death Valley as we speak, but won't for much longer as Death Valley becomes Death Valley again. It's the best super bloom, by the way, in a decade. So get over to Furnace Creek while you can.
It's
That
already
being said,
it's
that
already
being
too hot.
said, what?
It's already too hot to go to Death Valley.
No, my brother-in-law was just there. He lives part of the time up not too far from there, and they went out, and it's not too hot yet, but it's getting warm, getting warm. They call it Furnace Creek for a reason, by the way. That being said,
Back on topic, that 7 straight,
back on topic.
uh,
So they had a great run.
it's
They had a great year, and the question is, will we see something like it? Because David Ellison says we're going to do 30 films a year, and we're going to keep them in theaters 45 days. They're not going to go right to streaming. Well, most of them are going to say at least 45 days. So that'll help theaters, and it'll be a thing that's going to drive a lot of IP for us. It's going to drive our streaming service. It's going to drive our fast channels. It's going to drive our broadcast and cable operations. It's going to be awesome. It's going to cost some money. We're going to have some misses. It's going to be great. It's going to be great because we're going to have our secret weapon, Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca, helping out, and 30
Let me
films a year.
let me ask you this: how much of I don't want to take away from what Warner Brothers did. That's an achievement, but how much of that was just from competitive evacuation? There's just not that many new releases, or comparatively.
That sounded like people are like seeing who can poop faster, competitive evacuation. I just want to throw that
There's
out
not
there.
as much
But
competition at the box office these days.
well, it is true that there are fewer films that are debuting. There's still dozens of films out there.
Right.
The question is how many are going in that are, I don't know, above a certain level of craft and visibility and marketing's backing and all of that. And some of that's true. I mean, one of the ways you adjust risk is you don't put as many things out, you don't spend as much to market them, and you really pick your spots about what you put out. So it ends up being a lot of stuff that's either built on an existing IP or a sequel or a prequel or a pre-sequel, whatever, but original. But what was interesting, Sinners, one of the two co-favorites with the most nominations ever, I think 16. Sinners was an original show from Ryan Coogler. He wrote and directed it. Michael B. Jordan is one of the two favorites. We'll see what happens tonight to win Best Actor, playing two twins, very different twins. But it is a really distinctive, interesting film that covers about 5 different genres. And as I wrote in the newsletter, I find it fascinating to think about, why didn't Disney put this out? Because Coogler was coming off of 2 Black Panther movies that made about $2.2 billion. One, or were nominated for 4, or actually won 4 Oscars between them, production design, music, things like that. But still, Marvel movies that won Oscars and made $2.2 billion between them. And in 2022, you telling me he didn't have like a pitch for Sinners while he was talking to the Disney people about, hey, what are you going to do next, Ryan? And it's like they probably said, an original show about Black going to the South and the East and dealing with vampires and Ku Klux Klan people. Sorry to ruin this thing if you haven't had a chance to see it. It's available on HBO Max, but I don't think we're going to do that, Ryan. But thank you very much for your $2.2 billion. We love you very much. They're not going to be doing stuff like this.
Films a year is more than 2. I guess you expand your pipeline, you hire more people, you're combining 2
Or you
companies.
don't lay off the people you're already going to
Exactly.
lay off.
And that's a good message, but I mean, it's just it takes so much to hoist one and do it correctly, and give it and curate it and develop it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you have to make really strategic decisions now on efficient marketing, and it's nuanced. It's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of kind of ear to the ground and sensing, where audiences are. And if you're doing that 30 times, it just seems infeasible. Maybe he pulls it
It's
off.
quite a mill. I mean, he's already going from 8 to 15, I think, for Paramount Skydance. Paramount was just doing a handful of films. They tended to be things like the next Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, or whatever, the next Top Gun, which would probably at this point be more like Middle Gun. 3 in. It's a little bit less top. But, and that's one of the ways you obviously keep risk down. But I just don't know who's going to be doing that stuff. I will say that it's interesting because Ted Sarandos just spent 6 months staring at the inner workings of Warner Brothers, from its film development pipeline to its distribution and marketing, and understanding what's good, bad, indifferent, what's working, what's not. There, he and Greg Peters are
And
certainly
you
smart
think
cookies.
he's like drank the Kool-Aid on theatrical? He's
I don't think he drank the Kool-Aid, but I think he at least has a playbook. Should he choose to use it as he tries to figure out where Netflix's growth is going to come from. Now, they're going to continue to make more money off their ad supported stuff. That's going to continue to grow. That tier will continue to grow, that low cost and all that. That will continue to grow, particularly internationally where there's less cash and people will eat the ads because they're still going to get access to the content. So that's a growth opportunity. Games is an opportunity. Live events is an opportunity. The sports spending, I mean, we're going to see some more spending on NFL by Netflix, I'm pretty sure, particularly if they go ahead and get that 18th game in with an agreement with the Players Association. So where else could growth come from? It might be that you slowly build more of a theatrical releasing strategy for at least your high quality stuff. The thing that would have been the HBO part of a merged Warner Brothers Netflix, build something in there for that, to use the term that is now being used by Amazon beginning next month for its high end ad free with extra stuff version, an ultra version of Netflix, right? So you get some fancier high end program. But they already have two Best Picture winners, plus Ethan Hawke and Richard Linklater's Blue Moon is up for Best Actor. So they got Train Dreams, a beautiful film based on a Dennis Johnson novella it's just stunning. It should probably be a player for cinematography.
I will say that
Um,
about Netflix,
and Guillermo
and
del Toro's Frankenstein. So I mean, they've got some films in the run. So
I will say this, that I watched, as I alluded to you before we got on here, I watched War Machine, the new Alan uh, Richson
Richson,
action movie that combines parts Predator, parts Transformers. By Netflix action movie standards, well reviewed, like about 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. And to be honest with you, I had a lot of fun with it. I really enjoyed it.
which
Uh,
is really what it's for. It's to be having fun with, not having deep meditative thoughts on the wilderness of upper Midwest America in the first
no,
half of the
let me
last century,
just for a second.
for instance.
Assessing it, I remember watching Predator when that came out. I think it was 87, 88, and it blew my mind. I was younger then, obviously, and the mind was constantly being uh, effed with. It was kind of a unique film. They had a action star, Arnold Schwarzenegger's prime, Jesse Ventura,
Mold.
Carl Weathers. They had all this sort of action talent, and they made the most of it. Transformers, Michael Bay, 20 years later or whatever it was unique and it had its own aesthetic.
Let me
And
just say the Transformer trucks were nearly as emotive as Arnold, or vice
but
versa.
I mean, both of those films were like they had kind of a nuanced aesthetic, sort of something that can only be kind of gestated in the Byzantine structure of Hollywood as opposed to what Netflix does. It's, Ellison, for as much as I revile him for how he's getting his mergers done, seems to sort of be of that ilk too. So maybe in terms of the craft, it's better long term that you have a guy who at least has proven he can make like kind of movies you'd actually watch in the theater, like the second Top Gun.
Well,
Take it
but
overall. I want to make 30 movies a year.
you can't make 30 Top Guns. You can't make 30 Mission Impossible because Tom Cruise is done with that one, supposedly. Top Gun, they're going to squeeze one more out, but I don't know. The reality is the things he's good at are those big action films. His sister, Megan, with Annapurna, was the one who did all the art films. And I don't want to get all fancy-pantsy here because there's definitely a place, as Sinners showed, as One Battle After Another showed. There's room to make a few $100 million off a film that costs less than $100 million that are smart, original, or nearly original. I mean, Paul Thomas Anderson used a Thomas Pynchon novel, Vineland, one of the most incomprehensible versions of a Thomas Pynchon novel. I used the bare bones of that to create one battle of another after another and then punch it into this era. So those are basically very original takes that made a few hundred million. That is not David Ellison's forte, though he has shown he can make a big action movie and get it to goal. And that's great. They're going to need some of those. They're probably going to need quite a bit of them. They're not going to make 30 of those a year. Can't do that.
Getting back to the other side of the pointy-headed point I was trying to make, what was that Sandra Bullock movie? Bird Brain? No, Birdcage. Bird. It was the sci-fi thing with the aliens that if you saw them, you killed yourself.
Yeah, it was not Birdcage. I think it was Susanna Bird that directed it, wasn't it? Just saying. Nobody speak. Yes, it was very good. And with John Krasinski in it, wasn't that it? Sandra Bullock and
No, that
John
you're thinking of A
Krasinski.
Quiet Place.
Oh, Quiet
Um,
Place. That's what I
right.
was thinking.
But it's one of the most watched movies of all time, and listen, I never second guess my decision to watch a Netflix movie. Even that Matt Damon, Ben Affleck thing, the cop movie that came out a few months ago.
Yeah, that was good though, right? That was a good, solid
Well, I
movie.
absolutely loved it, but I don't know that I would watch their movies in theaters. I just don't. I just think I think they're not designed for that, I feel like. I think there's a line of demarcation there.
Um, you know, I'm going to be egghead again. I'm reading a great book. David Byrne, the Talking Heads co-founder and wonderfully wide ranging musician, wrote 13 years ago called "How Music Works." And one of the things that he has early in the book is a point that creativity is not just this spontaneous wellhead of stuff that happens to find purchase somewhere. Creativity is shaped within the context, and particularly for music. So music that worked for Bach in a drawing room in a palace didn't work in a Wagnerian giant concert hall in quite the same way. The kinds of music you played in CBGBs in 1975 was very specific for that audience in that room. And a lot of the Talking Heads music came out of that, but it was actually designed to work in a room like
If we
that,
could stay
not
there,
in
I
a
wouldn't mind.
giant stadium. And so my point is maybe Netflix, evolves some of its process because it's making it for streaming and distracted viewers who, as we've already talked about a few episodes back, are busy looking at a second screen or maybe a third screen while the show's going on. They have to keep reminding them, this is what we're doing, idiot audience.
Right.
I actually feel like, my audience, your audience is not an idiot. We love you people. You're great. But people get distracted and Netflix makes it for that audience. Maybe you don't do that in the theater because they're going to pay attention. Train Dreams, for instance, got about an hour and a half in theaters before it came to Netflix. It is such a beautiful meditative film. It begs you to watch as it unspools at a leisurely pace. That's a film that I don't feel like I understand what you're saying, and we have plenty of evidence that they're having to work with the limitations of their audience's context.
It make me
But
watch
there are films but there are films to
Fundamental
watch.
Drama at the
You
Oscars.
can watch it. It won't cost you anything. It's a beautiful film. It's not a
Speaking
perfect film, but it's a
of
beautiful
not
film.
costing me a dime, I did some, delving into the old free ad-supported streaming TV business, fast, as they say.
It's a big biz. We keep being told it's bigger than ever, and
Well,
and but yet it's just getting started.
I didn't dismiss it, but I got sick of going to, like, business-to-business streaming panels. Some of them we produce. "What makes fast go?" And you get a bunch of sort of folks from smaller production companies and networks talking that, like, didn't have sort of a cohesive point to make. And, the ratings are really kind of niche and small. It's vastly distributed. There's so many channels, so many platforms, but just it keeps marching on.
By the way, the movie you were talking about, Bird Box.
Bird.
Yeah. But that was Suzanne Bier, not Bird, Bier, Bier, who also did the wonderful The Night Manager and a couple of Oscar-winning foreign features. So,
So Amagi, which does technology backbones for many, many fast streaming channels, put out some data this week that was pretty interesting. In the fourth quarter, hours of streaming, hours of viewing, HOV, were up 70% in the US, with ad impressions up 22% year over year. Worldwide, the total was 20%, 21% hours of viewing spiked, 27% ad impressions. In regions like Latin America, the numbers are like 66% viewing spikes, 30% impression spikes. So it's kind of hard to ignore. I was asked by one of my freelance clients to delve into to sports, which is, according to Whirl, another technology company,
I mean, sports on fast,
sports on fast.
which is really unusual because given the cost of sports, giving it away doesn't seem to make sense, right? But you found
Well, it's a niche property on Fast because 2.7% was the total viewership share, which I thought was kind of astounding. It's increasingly important when Fast comprise 6% of all viewing. Why is it so low? Had a few conversations. There's just so much Fast content, so much, Green Acres channel 24/7 that uh, it kind of gets proportionally diminished in that respect.
4,000 channels, and they get pruned and added to like all the time. It depends on which TV OS, which we've talked about a lot, how important the TV OSs are, but they choose who gets to play on their platform. And so are you in, are you out? Do you have stuff that's hot? They're swapping stuff in and out all the time, right? Like
But
every
there's
month or
all
two.
these, like, fight leagues and women's sports leagues that
Yeah.
get wrapped, engaged audience. They're not huge. You're not talking about millions at this point, but they're, like, engaged like few other content. It's live sports. And the challenge is that they're getting these audience, but sold through programmatic bidding. So they might as well, it doesn't matter really. They're just selling sports. It's not the actual event kind of gets lost in that sort of.
Well, not that differently than 24 hours of Green Acres. I mean, you put on Green Acres not for a close, critical surveillance or survey of the intergenerational interplay between Ma Clampett and what Ellie Mae or Jethro and Mr. Mooney next door. I mean that's not Green Acres. Zsa Zsa Gabor. I mean, it's satire of the class struggle. Might be the cause for, I
Yeah,
don't know,
well,
a couple of PhD doctoral
speaking of,
dissertations, but I'm kind of thinking not.
I talked to Kathy Rassenberger, who's a veteran sports media person. She gets out there. She's at
Yep.
conferences.
I've had her on panels. She's great.
Yeah, she wants. She said she'll come on our panel. I hope she does. She
She's really sharp.
she
She's a queen.
co-founded and runs Free Live Sports, which is a fast platform.
Yep. Yep.
They've partnered with Scripps to sell their ads. Scripps, just being who they are, a little bigger and with some leverage, can get a decent CPM. So I thought that was an interesting example of a fast platform that's kind of
Absolutely.
adapting and figuring it out. I also talked to a guy, Keith Bedford, who's the general manager of World's European, Middle East, EMEA,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
EMEA. Yeah.
talk about Bundesliga, which is the German European Football League, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Everyone knows it's Bayern Munich and the Seven Dwarfs. They're also Bundesliga is very forward thinking on some of the stuff it's doing with media. Very
Well,
forward.
locally very popular, one of the bigger
Yes.
European leagues, but they're obviously there are European football fans all over the continent. They just did a deal with Samsung TV Plus to launch their first fast channel in the UK and Ireland, and it's going gangbusters. So, in the past, you'd have to set up a broadcast TV relationship. You'd have to invest in all this production technology. Now it's just right in the back of a global smart TV manufacturer that is the biggest shipper in the world, and watch your money grow. So it convinced me that we're going to see more live sports, more monetization, and a lot more viewership on this channel. And I need to not dismiss it as much. My story is going to be in Sports Video Group publishing in the next couple of days. Tune in. That's all.
Speaking of tuning in, this weekend, we're getting up against it. Monday, I think, is the deadline. The WNBA and its Players Association have been locked in contentious negotiations for months. This week, they spent double-digit hours per day for 4 days trying to hammer out a deal. Did not get one, and we may be getting to a work stoppage on Monday. This comes at a time when
I
the
would not.
league that would not be good. That would so not be good. It'd be so
Where?
unfortunate. The last 2 years, they have shot up. I love the fact that the league has really taken off with new young stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and Paige Beckers. The OGs are fantastic. Nafisa Collier, who's the Players Association president, is awesome. Asia Wilson on the Las Vegas Aces, the 3-time straight
They
MVP.
had
She's
their
pretty
breakout
incredible.
in the summer of
Yeah.
2024, spring summer, and
Yeah.
if this were to be a prolonged work stoppage, it could become the equivalent of insanity. Just sort
Yeah.
of a moment that sort of like was isolated.
Went away, just poof, all gone. Yeah, of course, he had his Harvard degree to fall back on. Caitlin, I'm not worried about, but some other players, it's an issue. But, they saw what happened with that little 3-on-3 league that some of the players did where they got a guaranteed chunk of the revenue, which was substantial for the 3-on-3 league that they created out of nothing 2 years ago. And they would like a piece of the $2.2 billion 11-year TV deal that the league did with 3 different providers. And, they get 9% now. The NBA gets 50%. They're like, we'd like 50%. I don't blame them.
I don't blame him at all. What does Caitlin Clark make in terms of a salary? I mean, she gets endorsement.
About $38, and I think they cover her parking.
I think it was like $70,000 a year.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's just a joke. But she makes that much per second, I think, with her State Farm ads. From the logo.
What's that? She's like rattling off the nomenclature of produce. I forget. It was a potato or something like that.
Yeah. Anyways, she does she's got a bunch of endorsement ads. It's just like a lot of the NBA players. They make really good bank from the NBA, but they make a whole lot more bank from the endorsements outside, which is one of the things I found fascinating when I went to the first ever draft for the new X Games League, which will kick off fully in late June in that garden spot, Sacramento, California, with the first of 3 contests, ending with a more traditional one-off festival featuring the 40 athletes that were drafted on Thursday night and 60 others who didn't get drafted and have some extra motivation. So it should be interesting. The league did good, though. It was amazing to see some of these kids. So, like, their number 1 overall pick, this very nice young woman, she won her first X Games medal of bronze at 12. Her name is Chloe Koval from the Gold Coast of Australia. Very nice person. She's got $1 million smile. I think she's going to be big. She's got skinny as a model. She got drafted by New York, the New York franchise. I can't imagine she won't be big doing that stuff. I mean, and she's a very nice human being who also has won 3 gold medals. She just turned 16 last month. And the flip side, the other New York choice, which I thought was also interesting, who's also MoonPay is the name sponsor for the league, 31-year-old skateboarder who's won 15 gold medals. Jason, I'm screwing up his first name because it's a little bit different, Houston. And he's got neck tats and another $1 million smile. You can tell he's a really charismatic dude. He's 31. He's like an old timer.
It's funny. I don't like to admit it, but I do use Facebook, and I'm in a group, skaters over 50. Not that I'm part of that group,
but possibly over 50.
I used to skate as a kid. I never did not have aptitude for it.
So you should be in the group skaters who are now over 50.
Dropping into a half pipe was the most terrifying thing you'll ever do.
Well, I can imagine. Oh my God, yeah. Some of the things these guys do.
I read Skateboarder magazine and was like, Tony Alva.
Thrasher? Were you a Thrasher guy?
Thrasher came along right after I, was in the latter years of high school and kind of out of it at that point. And it was in a period where skateboarding had kind of lost the Hester series, all these like big skate park sponsored events had gone away. It was a down part of the industry. But in those days, you had really seminal talent who were like inventing the sport. I mean, they were grinding and then they popped out into the air and then they realized they could grab their board and come down and keep going. And then you had Tony Hawk emerged as a guy who you could twist and do all sorts of vertical tricks. Hawk obviously monetized it and made a living out of it.
Into video games, a hugely popular, now remade, terrific. Oh, it was a lot of fun to play the video. I much preferred the video game because there's no broken bones involved, which to me, big win. But,
I don't know what his economic situation is. Steve Olson.
He's doing just fine. Yeah,
he's but he's
now doing like joint medicine ads. That's what he's doing now. He's Coke.
I mean, it's probably like old NBA players who look at some of the money that these guys are making now and go,
yeah, but Tony Hawk really, I mean, it's not fair to put Tony Hawk in with everybody else because Tony Hawk did monetize. He made the money then, and he's still doing. Like I said, he's doing a CoQ10 ad to help your joints, even though he's still doing tricks in these ads. But I mean, Tony Hawk is fine. It's really all those other guys, the ones that were in Thrasher, which is now a T-shirt people wear in a semi-ironic, like a Rolling Stones tour shirt. You know, it's like a Rolling Stones tour shirt. It's a Thrasher shirt. It's like, I remember when it's like, no, you don't. You're 12. Shut up. You know, but that's just me. But anyway, it was interesting to see what they did. I think it's going to be a very successful move by the newish owners of the X Games. Turns out the CEO has the same last name as I do, Jeremy Bloom. We are not related. He lives in Boulder, 20 miles from my dad, which is cool.
Football. He used to be an NFL.
He played for the University of Colorado for a couple of years, got into a landmark lawsuit with the NCAA, because it turns out he was also a World Cup skier and fantastic, and was getting all kinds of emoluments as a World Cup skier. And the NCAA said, well, you can't play football and get all that stuff in a whole different sport.
Yeah,
this was when the NCAA
be solvent.
You can't be solvent. You can't make money from something else. And his lawsuit, it took a couple years to play out. He played for he ended up actually getting a couple of runs with the Eagles and the Steelers in the NFL later on. But his lawsuit was one of the predecessor suits that helped lead to Ed O'Bannon's NIL lawsuit success, the House versus NCAA lawsuit that opened up so much and defanged the NCAA, et cetera, et cetera. So I got to meet him in person. I've interviewed him on Zoom several times. He's a very engaging guy. It's really annoying. He's very good looking. He was actually a model for a little while. He ran a digital marketing company that did really, really well. Dude. It is frustrating. And his sister is Molly Bloom, who was in Molly's Game. She ran these high-end poker things that she ended up writing a book about that Jessica Chastain played her in. And it's a great read, and it's a fun movie. So, and I think their sibling is a heart surgeon. It's like, I wish I had a gene pool like that. Not just a last name that I shared, but okay.
Privately, the
fine. Yes. Come on, folks. My parents should have done better. I had pretty good parents. They had pretty good genes. I still have all my teeth. It's amazing. But that being in my dotage, but I think that the X Games is going to be interesting. By the way, they'll have more room to run. They're going to be on Roku. They got a streaming job, an extended streaming deal now with Roku for multi-year. ESPN, which retains a minority stake, is the place where it started, came up with the whole idea in the first place. Still keep the linear rights, but Roku's got all the streaming rights. So that'll be something to watch as they put it on their sports channel and do the things that they do to try and reach that younger audience who will totally connect with, 16-year-old Chloe Koval and all. There are 14 and 15-year-olds in there. Are you kidding me? Who needs Thrasher when you got this going?
In terms of fast live sports TV rights, that seems to really fit. I mean, for a while they were doing the Major League Baseball thing. That went back to Peacock, but this seems like a really good fit for her.
Yeah, and just like a half an hour of tricks. Bing, 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 bing. You could do episodes of that all day long from 30 years of X Games and beyond. And, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. So they'll have 40 athletes for the summer league with 4 franchises to start. They'll do something like that for the winter sports. That draft will be in September, and with most of the same franchise owners, but that's TBD, I think. And they hope to expand with more events, more franchises, more athletes. Worth noting. One last thing. The athletes get a salary, a modest salary. They get an extra $20,000 from a crypto payment company or something. And they get health subsidies and travel expenses. So that's a big deal in a sport that's been all about just a bunch of misfit, loners doing their tricks for an event and then going to the next one and going to the next one.
I quoted Fast Times a few times. I'll quote it again. We need money, Spicoli.
Was it Fast Times, though? Wasn't that the early documentary about free ad-supported television at Ridgemont High School?
I think you're right.
That's my recollection. I could be wrong.
Agenda, which is to talk about our expansion. Read our new Thursday midweek issue, which will have some gated premium components to it. We'll add in the coming weeks and months. It'll be gentle. We'll ask you for money. You'll go down the road. We'll work it out. We don't know what the total will be. We'll find something we're both comfortable with. And join us at NAB. David and I will be producing some daily issues there, accepting your sponsorship money. Again, we'll work it out. We'll have a negotiation. And we'll also be at Stream TV.
Yeah, we're not the NFL, by the way. I don't know if you knew that. So it'll be a gentle negotiation. Trust me.
We'll be at Stream TV in Denver doing some video action on our own. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that we've once again.
I do want to mention while I'm at NAB, I'll also be at the Adobe Summit, which is in town at the same time, and they are losing their CEO. Shantanu Narayan announced alongside a pretty good earnings announcement this week that he's departing as soon as they find a replacement. This is the same within days of Bob Iger finally stepping down as CEO on the 18th at Disney after running what seemed like an endless succession process that led us to Josh tomorrow. This is the opposite of that. It's like he's stepping down without a successor. It's like, where are you guys going next? In the middle of all the software apocalypse that's going on because Claude Code can write like a replacement for Photoshop, apparently in like 6 hours. Not really, but that's the concern by investors.
I'm tempted to put it in the newsletter, looking at all these applications like Photoshop, Adobe Premiere, that are now being sort of ceded to LLMs. It's really kind of a
Well, I mean, Adobe has its like 3 years ago at the same same show at Adobe Summit. They unveiled their AI, Firefly, which they now have as a standalone app to do stuff like creator boards and all that, but also infused into Premiere Pro to do help ease some of the process of the really brain melting stuff of going through hours of footage and trying to put together, a video edit, like a rough draft of a video edit, or to go through photos, hundreds of photos, and find here's the best wedding shot, in Photoshop. So they've got that, and they did it in a way that was designed to be, and this was sort of quaint, really, given how ChatGPT and God knows Grok is, Grok AI. They did it on either public domain content or their own stock footage that they own, and they were paying the stock footage people for this additional use. So it was street legal. And that made it different and limited it in some ways, but also made it a little bit more admirable to my mind. But
I think
those outlaws don't care
about us. So we wind it down at some point. We say, enough's enough. You've had us. You've enjoyed us.
C'est tout, as they say. That's all, folks. Except, Porky le cochon. With that, this is David Bloom, co-host of Next TMT Talks, this podcast, and Next TMT, our weekly newsletter with a new midweek edition. We are also in partnership with Media Play News for a midweek podcast and doing other stuff. We are looking forward to building out new, cool, money-worthy content that you will help support us on, we hope. You can get all this stuff for free for now at nexttmt.com and sign up for the podcast on YouTube, sign up for the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And get our newsletter delivered right to your mailbox every Monday morning. And with all that, please like, share, quote, contribute, comment, all those, subscribe, definitely subscribe. This is David Bloom with my co-host, Daniel Frankel. Over and out.